My name is Lila Moreno, and for 30 years I poured myself into raising my son. I wore my body thin with overnight shifts, learned to stretch $1 until it sang, slept with one ear open for the sound of his coughing, the winters his lungs rattled like paper. I gave up my marriage, bent my life into a shape that could hold him, and I did it without complaint because love was the only currency I trusted. Today, I walked up the cracked steps of my son's shotgun house in mid-city New Orleans and told him I had left my position with Mrs. Beatrice Langford. I thought foolishly that coming home early would be a gift, a surprise. A mother lifting the weight off her child's shoulders. Adrian didn't even let me finish. "Why would you do that?" he snapped, the vein in his neck leaping. "That was $8,000 a month, Mom." "8. What are you planning now? Just sit around and freeload?" The little flicker of joy I'd carried from the Garden District to mid-city guttered out in a single breath. I had rehearsed a gentle way to tell him. I had my reasons neatly folded in my purse with my bus pass and the list of prenatal teas his wife liked. I wasn't prepared for rage. Camille looked up from her phone, her posture going sharp as a pin. "Postpartum recovery requires professionals," she said, as if she were reading a syllabus. "You used to be a housekeeper. You don't have training." Her mother, Dr. Ruth Hawthorne, Dean Hawthorne, to her faculty, mother, only to the mirror arrived with a sigh and a glance that could grate a soul. "Caring for an infant is not diapers and lullabies," she added. "It is procedure, metrics. We will coordinate a night nurse and a postpartum doula. The point is structure." They spoke without looking at me, as if my body had appeared where a lamp used to stand. I breathed through it. I had learned to soften my voice when others sharpened theirs. "I didn't come back to be in the way," I said. "I came back to help, to cook, to carry whatever needs carrying, to make it easier." "You'll cover the cost of the nurse then," Ruth replied instantly, like a judge handing down an expected sentence. "I will handle hiring and oversight." The knot landed beneath my breastbone. "Pardon?" "Since you quit," Adrian said, "it's the least you can do." Something cold lifted its head inside me. I stood there between their bright throw pillows and their spotless mantle, where our family pictures had been quietly replaced by Camille's graduation photos and Hawthorne family cruises, and I understood what I was to them. A salary with hands, a walking sum, not a mother, not a woman with a spine and breath and a tired heart that still knew how to love. "I'm 60, I said softly. "It's time I rest. I'm retiring." Camille laughed. It was not a cruel sound exactly. It was simply empty. "Retire from what? You don't have a pension, Lila. What are you retiring to?" I swallowed the sting. "Years ago, I tried to enroll in a plan. You both said the mortgage was more important. Because your income was tiny," she shot back. "We needed to be responsible." "Enough," Adrian cut in, the anger leaping again. "Mom, don't start. You know how stressed Camille Island. We need money. This is when you help. You're fine. You can work another 20 years. Another 20. The room drifted a few inches away from me, as if I were standing on a dock watching my life in a boat push off into the fog. For a heartbeat, I saw myself at 80, hands cracked, feet burning, still clocking into someone else's kitchen to keep my son's household fat and purring. I saw how they would thank me with rules, with chores, with a folding bed in a spare corner, with the kind of gratitude that shuts doors. "I said I'm retiring," I repeated, the words coming clearer now. "That is my decision." Ruth's expression flickered. She recognized resolve when it walked into a room. She traded tactics like a seasoned litigator. "No spare room here," she said lightly. "But I happen to know a gentleman in the Garden District looking for a live-in assistant. Room and board, competitive pay, a smooth transition for you, a win for everyone." Camille's smile sharpened. "Perfect. You can funnel your salary here for the baby's expenses." "No," I said. Ruth's tone cooled a degree. "Then a work lodging arrangement at Street Martin's senior residence." You could help in the kitchen. They offer a clean place to sleep." Camille rolled her eyes. "It's independence, Lila. Isn't that what you always preach?" "This is what you call independence?" I asked, very softly. "Sending me to scrub floors so I cost you nothing?" "Be realistic," Adrian said. He'd begun texting. I watched his thumbs move like he was ordering food. "I already called about availability. They have a spot. You could move today." He set his phone to speaker and began dialing again. In the echo of the ringing tone, 1,000 midnights unspooled inside me, thermometers and fever baths, and the month the clinic said he might not see his second birthday, the year we rationed heat and slept in the kitchen to save the bill, the little shoe I patched with dental floss because he loved it and there was no money for new love. "Hang up," I said. He did not. "Adrian," I said, "hang up now." He hesitated, let it ring once more, pressed end. He stared at me, the fury slipping to something else. Embarrassment? Shame? Only for a breath. Then he flung the shame away like a seed casing. "You made this bed," he said, "if you hadn't left Dad." I felt the knife twist. "I left to save you." He kicked my suitcase, and it toppled. A shirt slithered across the wood like something small and embarrassed. "You owe me," he said, "for life." I looked at my son, the boy I had followed into dark rooms with a bowl of steam, the teenager I had walked next to like a bodyguard, the man who now measured love in invoices. I thought of the sealed envelope inside Beatrice's cedar box, the one with my name on it and the word "when" in her tight black hand. I thought of the trust my late employer had built quietly over the years, not as a leash but as a key. I thought of how easily money can unmask a heart. I bent, lifted my suitcase, and set it upright. My fingers did not shake. "I am not a bank," I said. "I am your mother. That is not the same thing." Ruth's eyes narrowed. She could feel control slipping. "You cannot simply walk out," she said. "Be serious, Lila." "I am." I looked at Adrian one last time. "I will not be sent to a stranger's house to sleep in their shadow so you can live soft. I will not be installed in a senior kitchen like an appliance. I'm done being used." "You're not staying here," Camille snapped. "There is no room." I wasn't asking. I carried my suitcase to the door. The doorknob was warm from 1,000 hands, ours among them. I opened it to the afternoon, to the smell of rain on heat, to a blue jay screaming from the power lines like a little prophet. If you've ever carried a family on your back until your bones hummed, if you've been told your love must arrive as cash or it isn't love at all, if you've been called selfish for wanting a day with your own breath, leave me a comment and tell me. Like this and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because the price of betraying a mother like me is not what my son imagines, and the bill is coming with interest. I stepped onto the porch. Behind me, Adrian said my name like a curse, then like a prayer. I closed the door on both. The bright throats of the crepe myrtles shivered in the breeze, and I walked into the street where the air tasted of rain and brass and possibility. I dragged my suitcase through the rain-slick street until the noise of their house faded into the thrum of traffic and the hum of cicadas lifting in the humid New Orleans dusk. The handle rattled in my grip, a sound that reminded me of every overnight shift when I'd pushed a mop bucket through someone else's corridors. This time, I wasn't heading toward work, I was walking away from chains. But chains have a way of rattling after you. By the time I reached the bus stop, my phone buzzed. A text from Camille lit up the screen. "Be realistic. You're 60. You can't just retire. If you won't take the senior home job, at least try the live-in. Mom knows the family they're safe. We need you to contribute." The word contribute made my throat close. All the meals skipped, all the nights sleepless, all the hours worked until my knees sang like cracked bells, none of that counted as contribution. Not to them. A second text followed, this one from Ruth. "Don't be rash. Think it through. Without work, you'll be homeless." At least at Street Martin's you'll have a roof. And dignity. Dignity. They tossed the word around like a handkerchief, waving it in my face while stripping me bare. I tucked the phone into my bag and let the storm inside me rage quietly. For years I had endured. For years I told myself, it's just temporary. When Adrian is stable, when Camille is kinder, when Ruth finally sees me as more than a servant. But the truth was bone deep now. There would never be enough sacrifice to earn their respect. The bus rumbled up, brakes squealing. I climbed aboard and sat by the window, my reflection swimming in the glass. My face looked older than I remembered, but there was something in my eyes I hadn't seen in years' steel. As the bus carried me toward the quarter, my mind wandered backward, unspooling the path that had led me here. I still remembered the first time I saw Adrian. He was a year old, his skin almost translucent, lips tinged blue from the heart defect that nearly claimed him. He lay in a crib at the city's child welfare center, eyes too wide, too knowing. The director told me his birth parents had left him in a dumpster behind a laundromat. A passerby heard his faint cries and saved him. Something inside me broke open then. I had lost my own mother at 7. I knew what it meant to ache for arms that never came. I bent over that crib, and his eyes clung to mine like he'd been waiting for me. I went home and begged Daniel, my husband at the time, to consider adoption. He relented at first, but the strain of hospitals, surgeries, and bills gnawed at him. By the time Adrian was 3, Daniel handed me an ultimatum. Send him back or raise him alone. I want a child of my own blood. I chose Adrian. I didn't hesitate. Daniel walked out with his suitcase, leaving nothing behind but a stack of unpaid bills and a silence that rang louder than shouting. From then on, I worked. Nursing homes, cleaning shifts, waiting tables, stitching crafts late at night by the yellow light of a crooked lamp. My body bent, my spirit frayed, but Adrian grew. He survived. He laughed. He went to school like any other boy. I never told him the truth. I wanted him to believe he was chosen, not abandoned. I wanted him to grow without the shadow of a dumpster clinging to his name. I wanted him to believe the world could still be kind. But sitting on that bus, the storm lights flickering overhead, I wondered if I had done him a disservice. Had I mistaken silence for mercy? By protecting him from the truth, had I bred this entitlement, this hunger that devoured even me? The bus lurched, pulling into Canal Street. I disembarked into the neon glare, the air heavy with beignets, sweat, and the faint tang of the river. My hotel wasn't far, a boutique place with wrought iron balconies and a clerk who didn't ask questions when I checked in with a single suitcase and tired eyes. I shut myself in the small room, listening to the patter of rain on the shutters. I sat at the desk, pulled out the cedar box Beatrice had left me, and unlocked it with trembling hands. Inside were the papers, the trust deed, the account statements, the letter sealed in her looping script. $8 million, legally mine. I had been carrying this secret for months, waiting for the right time to reveal it. I had thought the revelation might soften Adrian, prove to Camille's family that I was not the burden they painted me. That wealth might buy me the respect love never could. But tonight, staring at their texts, replaying Adrian's fury, I realized how naive that was. If they had known, they would have devoured it, draining me dry before I could take a single breath of freedom. No. This money would not be poured into their house like water into sand. This money would be my key out of the cage. I pressed the sealed letter to my chest, smelling faint lavender on the paper. I didn't open it, not yet. I wasn't ready for Beatrice's words. I only knew this. I would not let Adrian or Ruth or Camille script the rest of my life. The next chapter would be mine. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The quarter was still quiet, the cobblestones slick with last night's rain. I brewed the weak hotel coffee, stared at my reflection in the window, and felt the weight of years pressing down on me. Then I reached for my phone and dialed the one number I had never used but kept tucked away for a moment like this. Olivier Perrault, Beatrice's attorney. He answered on the second ring, his voice smooth and steady as ever. Madame Moreno, I was wondering when you'd call. I'm ready, I said simply. I'll have the papers delivered by this afternoon. It's time you stop hiding. Stop hiding. The words struck something deep inside me. I'd spent my entire life shrinking myself, folding corners, making myself useful but invisible. Now, Beatrice's trust gave me something I'd never had before: leverage. Still, I hesitated. My son's voice echoed in my skull. You owe me for life. I rubbed at the ache in my chest, and memory pulled me backward again. Adrian's childhood was made of hospital corridors and whispered prayers. I remember sitting in waiting rooms that smelled of antiseptic and fear, counting coins in my palm to see if I could afford both the medicine and the bus fare home. Sometimes, I'd whisper to him in his crib, promising him a future he could not yet imagine. You'll be strong, baby. You'll have a house. You'll never know hunger. I worked until my bones screamed. When Daniel left, I learned to stitch together 3 jobs in a single day. By sunrise, I was cleaning hotel rooms. By afternoon, serving trays of gumbo and fried catfish. By night, I mopped the hallways of a nursing home until the soles of my shoes peeled. Adrian never knew how often I went without food so he could eat. He never knew the quiet despair of wrapping his feet in plastic bags because we couldn't afford boots in winter. And he never knew the humiliation I endured from Camille's family. When he started dating her, the Hawthorns had made their disdain obvious. Over dinner once, Ruth had looked across her crystal glass at me and asked, "So Lila, do you plan to keep cleaning houses until retirement? Or will you eventually find something more respectable?" I smiled then, swallowed the sting, and let it pass. For Adrian's sake, always for Adrian's sake. Now, in my hotel room, those sacrifices felt like they belonged to someone else, a younger woman who believed gratitude would someday bloom where she planted love. I set the papers Beatrice had left on the desk. 8 million. I could breathe for the first time in years. But what should I do with that freedom? I thought of Adrian again, of his face twisted with rage, of Camille's smirk when she suggested I funnel a paycheck from another family back into their household, of Ruth's calculated compromise always steering me toward servitude. No, they would never touch this money. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Mom, I'm sorry. Let's talk. Please come back. Camille's just stressed. We need you." For a second, my heart flinched. But then I remembered the sound of his voice the night before, cold and hard, telling me I owed him forever. And the doubt vanished. I typed one word back, "No." Then I powered off the phone and turned back to the cedar box. My fingers traced the seal of Beatrice's letter. I didn't open it yet. I wanted the timing to be right. But I could almost hear her voice, patient and elegant. "Mercy is not martyrdom, Lila. You must know the difference." By afternoon, Olivier himself arrived at the hotel. He was tall, his dark suit sharp even in the sticky heat. He laid the trust documents on the desk and said, "It's all in order. The assets are liquid. You can buy, sell, invest, whatever you wish." I nodded, but my throat felt tight. "And the house I paid for, the one in Adrian and Camille's name?" Olivier's expression hardened. "We can trace every dollar. You're entitled to reclaim it. It won't be simple, but it's possible." The thought of standing in that house again, claiming what I had built and been denied, sent a strange current through me. Fear? Yes, but also fire. "I'll do it," I whispered. Olivier gave me a long look. "Good. Then prepare yourself, Madame Moreno, because once you step into this light, they'll try to drag you back into the shadows. You'll need to be stronger than ever." I closed my hand over the papers, feeling the weight of Beatrice's legacy pulse like a heartbeat. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for a seat at someone else's table. I was building my own. The next week, I stepped into a space I never imagined would carry my name. The glossy showroom of Cypress Bend Villas, a gated enclave just beyond the oak-canopied streets of Uptown. The kind of place Camille's friends posted about on social media, all white pillars and manicured lawns, where the air smelled less of gumbo and more of money. The sales floor gleamed polished marble tiles, glass walls revealing scale models of sprawling villas with their own courtyards. Voices buzzed in low tones, people in linen suits and silk dresses pointing at floor plans. I walked in wearing the same sensible shoes I'd had for years, my hair pulled into a simple bun. My suitcase trailed behind me, wheels whispering across the floor. A young woman with wide, eager eyes hurried toward me, her name badge reading Monica. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she said warmly. "Would you like me to walk you through the project?" I nodded. "Yes. Start with the model homes." Her relief was almost palpable. Maybe she hadn't closed a deal yet. Maybe she was new. I liked her energy, though. Polite, attentive, none of the disdain I'd grown used to. We had barely taken 3 steps when a sharp voice cut across the room. "Who's screening clients today? Do we just let anyone walk in now?" I knew that voice before I even turned my head. Kayla Hawthorne, Camille's cousin, Dr. Ruth's niece, always polished, always smug. I'd only encountered her at family gatherings where she bragged about curating luxury experiences for select clients. She'd sneered at me back then, too, the way one might sneer at a stray cat. Now she strode across the showroom, her heels striking like gavel blows. Her eyes widened with delight when they landed on me. "Well, look who at Island, Margaret the maid," she said, using the wrong name deliberately. "Come to tour villas you'll never afford? Or just here for the free coffee and air conditioning?" Heads turned, conversations hushed, the heat of stares pressed in, some curious, some sympathetic, others too many quietly agreeing with her. Monica shifted uncomfortably. "Kayla, I can handle this client." "Client?" Kayla laughed, pushing her aside. "Please. This woman used to clean houses. I know her. She doesn't belong here." 2 uniformed security guards started toward me. I raised my hand calmly. "I came to view a property. On what grounds will you remove me? Because I don't look like you." The guards froze, uncertain. "I'd like to speak to your manager," I added, my voice cool and steady. "Unless you'd rather explain to potential buyers why you throw people out for walking through the door." The room went still. For a moment, I saw flickers of doubt on a few faces. Kayla's smirk faltered. A man in a crisp white shirt appeared, his stride quick, his expression controlled. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Alex, the sales manager. Is there a problem?" Kayla jumped in before I could speak. "She's just here to waste our time, pretending to buy. You can tell." Alex turned to me politely. "Ma'am, we do ask for proof of funds. Do you happen to have verification?" Without hesitation, I pulled a folder from my bag, already verified at the entrance. Kayla snatched it from my hands, flipping it open with exaggerated drama. She read aloud, her voice rising so half the showroom could hear. "Over $5 million in assets. Oh, please. This has to be fake. She's a housekeeper, for God's sake." A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd. I didn't flinch. I simply opened my phone, tapped my banking app, and held the screen up for all to see. Monica leaned closer, her lips parting as she counted the digits softly. 8 million. Whispers erupted around us. 8 million? She's got more than all of us combined. Damn, she's loaded. Kayla's face drained of color, her hand trembling as she shoved the folder back at me. But she wasn't finished. Her voice grew shrill, brittle with desperation. "This is a trick. I know her history. She was a live-in, probably some rich man's companion. That's where the money came from. Everyone here knows what that means." The venom in her tone was unmistakable. Some people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, but others leaned forward, hungry for scandal. I felt the old humiliation rise the decades of being reduced to less than human. But something inside me had hardened. I looked straight at Kayla and said, "Careful, you're walking into defamation." Then I turned to Alex. "Bring the contract." The room held its breath. "I'll take a villa," I continued. "This one," I said, pointing to the scale model nearest us. "Fully furnished. Move-in ready." Alex blinked, startled. "Without touring the others?" "No need. And make sure Monica handles the sale." I glanced at Kayla. "She's earned the chance. Unlike some people." A silence fell heavy and electric. Then Alex straightened, his tone brisk and deferential. "Of course, Monica. Please escort Miss Moreno to the signing area." As we walked away, I caught the sound of Kayla's breath hitching, the scrape of her composure collapsing. Her voice followed, low but shaking. "She's just a glorified maid pretending she's somebody." I didn't bother to look back. I only smiled faintly at Monica and said, "Let's get the paperwork started." The signing area smelled faintly of leather and ink. A long mahogany table gleamed beneath pendant lights, and a stack of contracts awaited my hand. Monica's hands trembled as she laid them before me, her eyes bright with a mix of nerves and hope. "Are you sure, ma'am?" she asked softly. "It's a big commitment. We can still tour the other villas if you like." I met her gaze. "I'm sure. And call me Lila." Her lips parted in surprise, then curved into a smile. "Yes, Miss Lila." As I picked up the pen, I could feel eyes boring into my back. Kayla's, sharp with venom, and others, curious, skeptical, awed. I signed each page with deliberate grace. The scratch of my signature across the paper sounded louder than the whispers rising in the showroom. She didn't even blink. Money talks. Wonder where she really got it? Kayla's voice cut through, dripping with poison. "You think you know her? She's not some miracle investor. She was a live-in assistant for a wealthy man. You all know what that means. That's how she got her millions." The venom was out in the open now, spilling across the room like oil. Some of the onlookers gasped. Others leaned closer, hungry for spectacle. Monica's face flushed with outrage. Before I could respond, Alex appeared again, frowning. "Kayla," he said sharply, "enough. One more word, and you're out." But I held up my hand. "No, let her speak." The silence was immediate, thick. I turned slowly to Kayla. She stood stiff, arms crossed, her face a mask of disdain, though I could see her jaw tremble ever so slightly. "You say I worked for a wealthy man," I said evenly. "You're half right. I did work for someone wealthy. Her name was Beatrice Langford. She was a widow, a philanthropist, and the most decent soul I've ever known. She treated me like family, not staff. She left me her estate when she passed." Kayla's lips twitched, but I didn't let her interrupt. "You slander me in public, and you do it because the truth offends you. That a woman who started with nothing can end with everything." A hush fell over the showroom. Kayla tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Please, do you expect us to believe?" I pulled out my phone, tapped a contact, and raised it to my ear. "Yes, this is Lila Moreno," I said clearly, every word deliberate. "I'd like to report defamation and harassment at Cypress Bend Villas." Kayla's eyes widened. "You wouldn't?" "I already did." It took 10 minutes for 2 uniformed officers to arrive. The crowd parted like water. They listened quietly as I explained what had happened, their eyes flicking toward Kayla, who grew paler by the second. "Ma'am," one officer said firmly, "you've crossed a legal line. You can apologize publicly right now, or we open a file. Your choice." Kayla's face crumpled with fury and shame. She glanced at the watching crowd, then back at me. "I'm sorry," she muttered, her voice strained. "Louder," the officer instructed. Her chest heaved. "I apologize," she said, her voice echoing in the hushed showroom. I inclined my head once, satisfied. "Apology accepted. Let's move on." The officers nodded and left. The whispers rose again, but this time, the tone had shifted. Respect threaded through curiosity now. I turned back to Monica. Actually, let's add another villa. One for myself, one as an investment. Her eyes went wide. Another one? Yes. I smiled, warmth creeping into my voice for the first time that day. And I want you to handle that sale too. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. Miss Lila, this will be my first sale, my first 2 sales. Then let's make them unforgettable, I said. By the time the ink dried, Monica's hands were shaking so hard she could barely collect the papers. Her eyes glittered with unshed tears. She whispered, "You've just changed my life." I squeezed her hand gently. "And don't you let anyone tell you you don't belong here." Behind us, Kayla stood frozen, her face stiff, her career dissolving before her very eyes. For once, I didn't feel pity, only clarity. When I walked out of Cypress Bend Villas that afternoon with 2 contracts in my bag, I felt taller than I had in decades. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was choosing. That night, I checked into the grandest hotel in the city, the Street Charles Royale. The bellhop's eyes widened when I wheeled in nothing more than my old suitcase, but no one questioned me when the front desk slid across the keycard for a penthouse suite. Money speaks in a language that erases doubt. The suite had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mississippi, where tugboats dragged their burdens under the glow of bridge lights. I stood there barefoot on plush carpet, my reflection ghosted against the river's black surface. For the first time in decades, I wasn't calculating which bill to pay first. I wasn't wondering whether the gas would be cut. I wasn't begging anyone to see my worth. And yet, the silence pressed in. Freedom feels different when you've been chained for so long it can be dizzying, even frightening. My phone rang. I expected Camille's sharp tone or Ruth's clipped judgment. Instead, it was Adrian. I let it buzz 4 times before I answered. "Mom." His voice cracked, soft, pleading. "I'm sorry. I lost my temper." Camille was stressed. "You know how at Island. We need you." I closed my eyes, letting his words wash over me. He sounded so much like the boy who once clung to me during thunderstorms, who whispered, "Don't leave me," when the surgeries left him trembling. But I remembered, too, the man who had kicked my suitcase, who told me I owed him for life. "I'm not coming back, Adrian," I said quietly. There was a long pause. Then his tone shifted, sharp as a knife. "You'll regret this. You think you can just walk away from your family?" I ended the call. The days that followed were strange, almost dreamlike. I spent mornings touring my new villas with Monica, who worked harder than anyone I'd ever met, her gratitude spilling out in every careful detail she arranged. By afternoon, I strolled the French market, letting the jazz of street musicians fill the hollow places inside me. At night, I returned to the hotel suite and reread Beatrice's sealed letter, until finally, one storm-heavy evening, I broke the wax. "Dearest Lila," it began, written in her steady hand. "You gave me loyalty without condition, dignity when I was fragile, and companionship when the world turned cold. I had family, but none who stood beside me as you did. This gift is not a handout. It is acknowledgement. You are worthy of more than servitude. Use this inheritance to build a life that belongs to you, not to anyone else's expectations. Mercy is not the same as martyrdom. Learn the difference." Tears blurred the ink, but I kept reading until the words burned themselves into me. Mercy is not martyrdom. It was late one night when the past came clawing back. The concierge called up to the suite. "Miss Moreno, there's someone downstairs asking for you. He says he's your son." My breath caught. I went to the window. Sure enough, down on the curb, Adrian stood in the rain. His clothes were damp, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked smaller somehow, hunched, desperate. When I didn't come down, he fell to his knees on the slick pavement. His voice rose, muffled, but unmistakable. "Mom, please, I was wrong, don't leave me. No matter what, I'm still your son." People slowed on the sidewalk, watching. Some shook their heads, others whispered. To them, he looked like a tragic figure, a lost boy begging his cold mother for forgiveness. But I knew better. I knew those tears weren't for me, they were for the money he suspected I had. I pulled the curtain closed. The next morning, I hired a driver. From then on, I entered the hotel through the garage, shielded behind tinted glass, never giving Adrian the satisfaction of my eyes. For 2 weeks, he waited. Rain or shine, dawn or midnight, he lingered, performing for whoever would watch. But when it became clear I wouldn't break, his theatrics ceased. Or so I thought. What came next was worse, far worse. I first noticed it in whispers. At the bakery near Jackson Square, a cashier who had always greeted me kindly looked away too quickly, her smile tight. At the hotel, a bellhop lingered oddly long as he handed back my card, eyes flicking with something sharper than curiosity. Even Monica, usually so open, seemed guarded when she called to confirm a detail about one of the villas. Finally, she said softly, "Miss Lila, I just wanted to tell you not to take the comments to heart. People are cruel online." "Comments?" My stomach dropped. "About you. Haven't you seen?" I hadn't. That evening, alone in the suite, I searched. And there it was. Adrian Pierce Live, on Streamcast. The title of his channel screamed across the page, "How My Mother Abandoned Me." I clicked. The image nearly stopped my heart. Adrian sat in a dim room, his hair unkempt, his voice deliberately low and ragged. Tears streaked his face. "She left me," he told the camera. "After 30 years of sacrifice, my own mother decided I wasn't worth her time. I begged her not to go, but she cut me off just like that." The chat scrolled like wildfire. "Stay strong, brother. She doesn't deserve you. My mom left me too, you're not alone." He sniffled dramatically, pressing his hand to his chest. "I'm not asking for money," he said, even as a donation ticker in the corner climbed higher and higher. "I just want her to say I'm still her son. That's all." My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped the phone. Each lie was like a knife. He painted himself as a victim, abandoned by a heartless mother chasing wealth. He twisted every sacrifice into a weapon. When I moved away for work, he said I chose luxury over family. When I bought him the house, he said I refused to let him have independence. And now, with my inheritance cloaked in secrecy, he implied I was some hidden mistress whose riches came from shame. It spread fast. Clips of his streams bounced across social media, spliced with sad music, with captions like, "She traded her son for fortune." I became a villain in feeds I didn't even know existed. That night, I sat in the dark, the glow of the phone painting my face pale. Beatrice's words echoed, "Mercy is not the same as martyrdom." No more martyrdom. The next day, I registered an account on Streamcast. The name, Truth of Lila Moreno. That evening I clicked, Go Live. Within minutes, thousands swarmed in, some curious, some hostile. I let the silence stretch, then spoke, voice steady. "Good evening. I'm the so-called mother you've been hearing about. Adrian Pierce is my son, or he was. He says I abandoned him, that I cast him aside while I lived in luxury. Let me show you the truth." I reached for the stack I'd prepared, notarized trust documents from Beatrice Langford, bank records, medical receipts from Adrian's surgeries, tuition invoices, even the deed of the house I'd bought in his and Camille's names. These papers represent 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years of working 3 jobs to keep a child alive who wasn't even mine by blood. Gasps filled the comment feed. Questions flew. Not hers? What does she mean? I leaned closer to the lens. Yes, Adrian was adopted. I found him as an infant in an orphanage, abandoned in a dumpster because of a heart defect. I gave up my marriage, My chance at more children, my youth, everything for him. And now he tells the world I am heartless because I stopped being his ATM. The comments exploded. You saved his life, how dare he? She bought him a house, and he kicked her out? Ungrateful parasite. I'm sick. Still, a few skeptics lingered. Why say this now? Maybe she's lying. I smiled faintly, lifting the final page. Adrian's official adoption certificate, embossed and signed by the state. Silence on the feed. Then an avalanche of outrage, only this time, not at me. He weaponized pity. Cancel his channel now. She gave him everything, and he stabbed her in the back. By morning, Adrian's stream had been flagged thousands of times. By nightfall, his channel was gone. But the story was far from finished. The takedown of Adrian's channel should have felt like victory. For a fleeting moment, it did. My name was no longer spat like poison in the comment sections, no longer trending as the heartless mother who abandoned her son. Instead, messages poured into my new channel. You're an inspiration. You taught me kindness doesn't mean slavery. Thank you for speaking the truth. But the storm wasn't over. 3 days later, a floral arrangement appeared at the gates of Cypress Bend Villas. A towering spray of white lilies with a card tucked inside. To the best mother in the world, love, your son Adrian. I laughed so hard I startled the gardener. Then I carried the flowers straight to the trash bin. Before dropping them in, I snapped a photo, the crushed petals, the bent stems, the insincere card lying face up, and texted it to the concierge. From now on, refuse any delivery from this person. And please forward him this photo. I wanted him to see exactly how little his theatrics meant. But Adrian wasn't a man to retreat gracefully. He escalated. Every morning, when my driver rolled the car out of the villa gates, he was there on the sidewalk, rain or shine. He threw himself to his knees, clutching at the air as if I might step out and embrace him. His cries cut through the glass. Mom, please forgive me. I was wrong, Mom, I'll do better. No matter what, I'm still your son. Passersby stopped to gawk. Phones held high. Some whispered sympathy for him, others suspicion toward me. To them, he looked like a tragic figure, a prodigal son spurned by an unfeeling mother. But inside the car, behind tinted glass, I knew the truth. His performance wasn't for me, it was for their cameras. For pity, for leverage. I told the driver, don't slow down. And each day we glided past, my gaze fixed straight ahead. 2 weeks he kept at it. 2 weeks of staged sobbing, of collapsing onto sidewalks, of turning strangers into his unwitting audience. Then one morning, he was gone. Relief washed over me like sunlight breaking storm clouds. But the reprieve didn't last, because Adrian hadn't given up. He had changed tactics. One humid afternoon, as I arranged paintings in the new villa's sitting room, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. Richard, my ex-husband. The man who had walked out 3 decades ago, suitcase in hand, leaving me to raise Adrian alone. I hesitated, then answered. Lila. His voice was older, gravelly, but still carried that clipped authority I remembered. You won't believe this. Adrian tracked me down. I gripped the edge of the mantel. What did he want? He demanded a paternity test. Richard gave a humorless laugh. When I told him I wasn't his biological father, he refused to believe it. Made a scene at my office. I had no choice but to prove it legally. My chest tightened, so Adrian knew now. Knew the truth I had shielded him from his entire life. I didn't tell him the rest, Richard added quickly. I kept my promise. I didn't reveal where he came from. That's still your story to tell. But Lila, he's furious. And when a man like that runs out of lies, he'll try to destroy with whatever truth he has left. The line went quiet. I whispered, thank you for warning me. When I hung up, the villa suddenly felt too large, too echoing. My own breath seemed loud in the silence. Adrian hadn't stopped. He was only gathering sharper weapons. And when he came back this time, I knew he wouldn't be begging. He'd be ready to burn everything in his path. The first signs came not from Adrian himself, but from strangers. At the cafe where I took my morning coffee, 2 women at the next table leaned in, whispering not nearly quietly enough. "She's the one, the mother who dumped her son." No, he said she was never even his real mom, just some woman who wanted attention. Their eyes flicked toward me, then darted away when I met their gaze. My skin prickled, but I kept my chin lifted. By the time I returned to the villa, Monica was waiting nervously by the gate. "Miss Lila, I think you should see this." She held up her phone, hesitation in her eyes. There it was. Adrian's new channel. A different platform this time, one hungry for scandal. His banner read, "The son she tried to erase." I pressed play on his latest stream. He sat in a dim apartment, light casting shadows over his face. His voice dripped with wounded bitterness. "She says she saved me, says I should be grateful. But no one asked her to adopt me. I didn't ask to be her charity case. Maybe if she hadn't interfered, I'd have found a real family. One who didn't throw me away the moment money came into play." He leaned closer to the camera, his eyes glistening. "She ruined my life. And now she's parading her wealth like some badge of honor, while I'm left with nothing. Nothing but the truth." The comments scrolled in like acid. "She sounds like a monster. No wonder he's broken. Exposing her is the right thing to do." My fingers trembled as I set Monica's phone down. He wasn't just slandering me anymore. He was rewriting history, twisting my every act of love into cruelty. And worse, he was dragging my choices into the public square, whipping up a mob that didn't care about truth, only spectacle. That night, I called Olivier. His voice was cool, professional. "We can act immediately, file for removal, press for damages, gag him legally." But Beatrice's words echoed in me again. "Mercy is not martyrdom." "No rush," I told him. "Let him think he's winning. I'll handle this my way first." And so, the next evening, I set up my own stream again. But this time, I came prepared. The title of my broadcast, "The Truth He Doesn't Want You to Know." Within minutes, thousands piled in, many of them refugees from Adrian's poisonous show. The comments flew fast. "Is this really her? She looks too calm to be guilty. Let's hear her out." I leaned forward, meeting the lens with steady eyes. "Adrian Pierce says I ruined his life, that I forced myself into his fate, that I abandoned him. Tonight, you'll hear the truth, all of it." I began with the adoption certificate, holding it to the camera. He was left in a dumpster, 1 year old, with a failing heart. I chose him when the world had discarded him. I showed the hospital bills, the school receipts, the house deed in his name. Then I played the audio file, Adrian's own voice, sharp and unmistakable, as he tried to arrange for me to work as a live-in assistant for a wealthy elderly man. "You heard that correctly," I said, voice like steel. "My son's idea of love was sending me to scrub floors in another man's house just so he could keep cashing my labor. Does that sound like abandonment or survival?" The comments erupted. "He used her like an ATM. That's abuse, plain and simple." I can't believe I ever pitied him. Still, I wasn't finished. "Adrian says he never asked to be adopted. He's right, he didn't. That was my choice. And it was the best choice I ever made, until he decided my worth ended at my wallet. Then, for the first time, I let my anger burn through. Gratitude isn't owed, but respect island. And if a man cannot give that to the woman who kept him alive, then he is no son at all." The screen flooded with outrage not at me, but at him. The tide had turned, and this time, it wasn't just whispers, it was a roar. By morning, his new channel was collapsing under waves of backlash, his lies crumbling beneath the weight of proof. But I knew Adrian. And I knew a cornered animal doesn't slink away quietly. No, he would come for me harder than ever. Adrian's second downfall should have ended things, but his rage only deepened. Stripped of his platform, he resorted to uglier tactics, lurking at the edges of my world like a storm cloud refusing to disperse. It began with phone calls from unknown numbers, each one laced with threats disguised as pleas. "If you don't want me to ruin what little reputation you've got left, you'll give me what's mine." Then came the letters slipped under the villa's gate, messy handwriting scrawled across cheap stationery. "You owe me, Mom. Without me, you'd have nothing." I tore them up, every one, until my wastebasket overflowed with shredded demands. But the day he dragged Richard into it, my resolve hardened to steel. Richard called again, his voice heavy with irritation. "He's relentless, Lila. Shows up at my office, shouting about betrayal. I had to call security to throw him out." I closed my eyes. I could picture Adrian's face twisted with fury, the same look I had seen when he kicked my suitcase across the floor. "He'll burn every bridge he has," Richard added grimly. "And when there's nothing left, he'll turn to burning you." Weeks passed. I moved through them like a soldier, calm, composed, prepared. The lawsuit Olivier filed wound its way through the courts, and in the end, justice was served. Adrian was ordered to pay damages and was banned from streaming platforms altogether. His claws were dulled by law. But the true blow came not from judges or lawyers, but from within his own home. One gray afternoon, I received word through a mutual acquaintance. Camille had filed for divorce. No theatrics, no accusations, just a clean break, her signature inked on quiet papers. She'd finally seen him for what he was, a man who fed on pity, who carried resentment like a crown, who drained everyone around him until they were hollow. And with that, he vanished. Months passed before I heard a whisper of him again. A friend slid her phone across the cafe table one morning, her voice low. "Look." The video showed a man hunched beside a trash bin on a cracked Canadian street. His clothes hung loose, his eyes vacant, his hands trembling as he gnawed at a crust of bread. The camera panned closer. It was Adrian. He laughed suddenly, wild and manic, then collapsed into sobs that shook his whole body. A ghost of himself, a ghost of the child I once carried through hospital corridors. I watched in silence, then slid the phone back. No triumph filled me, no vengeance, only a deep, quiet sorrow, like watching a fire burn itself to ash. Years later, I sold the villas I'd bought in the heat of fury. The market soared, and I walked away with more than I'd invested. What once symbolized defiance turned into the foundation for a gentler life. I moved to a lakeside town west of New Orleans, where wisteria draped over trellises and mornings smelled of fresh coffee instead of smoke. I painted again. I planted roses. The world slowed, and for the first time, I breathed without bracing for the next blow. No one called me Mom to demand more. No one accused me of failing. I belonged to myself, at last. Sometimes people ask, "Do you regret adopting him?" I used to wrestle with that question, but now I only smile softly and shake my head. "No," I say. I don't regret saving a child. I only regret not learning sooner that love is not the same as sacrifice, that protecting yourself is not cruelty, that kindness should never cost you your soul. I was never perfect, never a saint, but in the end, I became something better, a woman who finally lived for herself. And it turned out it wasn't too late at all.